Hi, this is Cliff from QA1 with Steve, my hand model today. We are going to install a new K-member on a 2003 Mustang with a 4.6 motor. This is the new K-member that QA1 has produced. Comes with our modular motor mounts, all the hardware that it takes to mount it, and we're gonna get going. First, we gotta disconnect the battery and alternator. Let's go. We rigged up an engine brace, so we're gonna mount that. It's just taut, it's not tight or off the motor mounts. Once you remove the alternator, just roll it back, make sure it's not pinching any wires, and it's out of the way. Now we're gonna go under the car. This Mustang already has a lowering kit with the spring in it. So to get that spring out, we're gonna kind of do it backwards. We're gonna actually remove the strut because we wanna actually continue to use the same lower control arm. So we're gonna remove the strut, drop the spring out, and remove it for our upgrade. We're gonna remove the top of the strut. Not all the way, just loose. We're gonna remove the sway bar end links, and then we're gonna remove the top of the struts. Now slowly drop the lower control arm. We're going to remove the brake caliper to give us more room to swing the strut out. Using a pry bar, pull the spring out of the lower pocket. This K-member does not accept a stock spring, so you do have to do a coilover package as of right now. Now we're going to push the strut back up into the tower. Underneath the car, we're going to start with removing this lower brace. Now we're going to remove the lower control arm from the K-member. Looks like for this bolt to clear, we got to take out this rear mount, which we're going to take out anyways. Remove the bolts from the rack. Now take the rack and slide it off the bushings. A pry bar might help. Now the front bolt should slide right out. We have to remove the steering column so that we can get the rack to come forward off the K-member. So we're gonna do that. Now we're going to unbolt the engine mounts. So now with the engine mounts disconnected, we're going to lower the car back down and take the tension off the K-member. We made this brace in our fab shop just as something we could use for this build. You can use a cherry picker at home instead of something as elaborate as this. First, we're going to remove the upper frame mounts. Now we're going to remove the lower frame mounts. Good to have an extra set of hands and maybe a jack to help you carry the weight. So here's the two different K-members. We're taking out a lot of metal and we're adding a lot of clearance. Now it's time to bolt this one in. To mount the motor mounts, you'll need a 9/16 wrench and ratchet. The hardware is provided. Just load up all the hardware. Slide her in place. We reuse the standard hardware for mounting it back to the frame. It helps before you drop the K-member in to realign all of the nuts and bolts. They have these retaining clips that snap into place. And it's just easier to align it now than later. So we got the K-member mounted up. Everything's still loose at this point because we were going to change how the wheelbase is down the road. Things aren't quite lined up yet. That'll happen once the wheels get put back on. Now we're putting the rack mount on. Depending on if you have a Fox or an SN, these plugs will be different for your application. It controls how the bump steer reacts through the travel of the suspension. For your application, the tab may have the hole at the top or the bottom. Check the instructions for full details. You then feed your bolts and supplied hardware in with each one. The rear will have the same plug. Now that we've tightened up the rack, we're gonna mount the engine. Now we're gonna release the tension on the motor and put them back down on the motor mount plates. Now we're gonna torque down the motor mounts. With the motor mounted up tight, we're gonna take a look at the lower control arms. Now on the front side, there is a spacer that is added. With stock control arms, place the supplied washer behind the front mount. With QA1 street arms, place the washer on the front side of the control arm. Now we snug everything up. The rear bracket is braced with this gusset that fits a nylock right in there. No wrenches needed. Now we're going to reattach the steering column. It's a 13mm ratchet. Slide the shaft back on. There's only one way that it can slide back onto the shaft. We've got the alternator hooked back up, the battery connected, and everything tightened up. With that, our 2003 Mustang is complete, except for the K-member itself is still a little bit loose. We want to be able to set our wheelbase once we get our wheels back on. We're going to back the car up, put it onto the alignment rack. Now that we're on the alignment rack, we're going to jack up the front end, loosen up all the bolts in the K-member, in the upper frame and the lower frame, and we're going to make some measurements to make sure that we're even with our wheelbase. With the car in the air, first we're just going to take a look at how it looks. Does it seem like it's centered between the wheel wells? And it looks pretty close. So we're not going to have to move it too far. Now we're going to take a static point somewhere in the rear of the car. We picked a trailing arm hole location to start from in the back, and we're going to measure to the rear of the K-member lower frame bracket. So I'm at about 70.5 on this side. 70.5. Now we're going to torque all the bolts up and we're good to go. Now it's time to reattach the sway bar. So now everything's installed. All we got to do is finish up the alignment. I want to say a special thanks to Steve, Scotty for letting us borrow his 2003 Mustang. And if you have any questions, call our tech department or visit QA1.net.